everyone. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. So, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can always follow us there. Every like and share and subscribe can help our channel to be seen by many more Stargate fans. So, we really appreciate it. And then we also have all of our socials listed up on the screen right now if you wish to follow us there. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Bye. And to all the Stargate fans out there, we would love to hear from you and chat with you on our show. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to us via any of our social media platforms or email.
So, today we have all taken a monumentous jaunt through a different orifice. I'm quoting O'Neill here, okay? But no, we finally have started to watch Universe, and this is something I think none of us have, like Atlantis, some of us have seen some of it or all of it or various parts, but none of us had ever really seen Universe, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I had seen Universe.
All of it?
Yes.
Wait, you watched all of Universe before?
Yes.
So I don't even have to worry about spoilers?
No, you do have to worry about spoilers because I've forgotten it all.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay,
Okay.
so this is here I was like, oh yeah, let's make this big.
Yeah.
But anyways, I've never seen Universe. Martin's never seen Universe. We just concluded Atlantis, and now we're back. We thought we would talk about our first impressions of Universe and the kind of initial introduction to the show and our first feelings on it, why we think some people might have certain opinions about Universe, what our opinions are, the things that surprised us, the things that didn't surprise us. So then, Martin, since you're our guest, how about we start with you and ask, going into Universe, because I think all of us had some ideas. What are some ideas or preconceptions that you had about the show, that you've heard about it before watching?
Oh God. Well, I remember when it came out, I watched the first probably 3 episodes, I would guess, since it's sort of a 3-parter. But I remember watching at least the very, very beginning of it. And then I kind of stopped. Why, I don't remember. So I was familiar with the characters and how they got onto the ship, but beyond that, I have had no recollection, nor do I really know what the opinions are in the wider Stargate community, let's call it that, about Universe.
Okay.
So I can only give you my opinion. So.
Oh, okay. So you really hadn't heard anything or followed anything?
No, not really. Not that I could say I did. No. No. I know that it wasn't as well received as SG-1 or Atlantis. That I know.
Okay.
So beyond that, I don't know anything about the production itself, why it only got the 2 seasons that it did, what the cause of that was, if it was lack of interest or lack of money or both, or so. I'm going into this knowing nothing, so educate me.
And what about you, Emily?
So the question was, what did I hear going into it when I first watched it?
Yeah, like, is there anything you knew already, or maybe you knew nothing, but is there any kind of things you kind of knew already, or maybe you were preparing yourself a little bit for?
I'm trying to remember. Like, so when I watched it the first time, I don't think I knew that it wasn't well received initially. And then I was surprised to hear about that as I started getting into the show. Then I can't remember if it was during that time that I heard that people didn't like it, or if it was after the fact. Once it got canceled, like how some people like were happy it got canceled, things like that. So I definitely know at some point I must have heard something to know that some people did not like it. But I definitely did not hear that initially going into it and watching it the first time. And I did tell you guys that I had watched it one time through, because remember I says to you something about Rush one time and you guys are like, oh, no spoilers. And I told you guys I watched it one time through, but I don't remember it. So it'll be like it's new. So just putting
Okay.
that out there.
It's funny because when I thought maybe I swore I had heard that maybe you said you watched the first couple episodes or something, but I totally
That
didn't
was
remember
probably
at
me.
all that you said you watched all of it. So I'm totally
Yeah.
like,
I'd
I
watched
obviously
all of it, so I have an interesting perspective of when I watched it then versus now. I have
that's interesting. Okay.
varying views of it actually that are slightly different now
Yeah.
than then. So I'll mention those later. But
I bet you it like messed with my head because we're slightly ahead of you, I think, in the show. And so when you were saying no spoilers, then it probably like just blocked that you've ever seen it.
not just
Okay.
slightly, a lot. You're a
Yeah,
lot
we're
ahead
quite,
of me.
yeah. Yeah, but we will only go to episode 4 today. We won't say anything beyond that. But yeah, that's why I was
Cool.
like, oh, when you said spoilers, but yeah, I get what you mean. I forget most things, but for some reason, some of the like larger item things, I usually don't like those things sometimes stick out. So like in Atlantis, even though I forgot most of the episodes, I still remember that like Beckett died. So that was not such a other than when it happened, it wasn't a surprise. So
Yeah, like I didn't even remember a lot of Atlantis. Like it was more of like as I was watching it, certain things then like would kind of hit back into my memory somewhere. But like even with any main things that happened in Atlantis, I didn't remember. So yeah. But how
um
about you? How about you with have you heard anything initially and your thoughts?
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because all I really heard about the show was that a lot of people didn't like it because it had a different vibe and it wasn't a Stargate show. And I think like at some point my ex tried to watch it and like stopped after 2 episodes or so, or maybe more, I don't know, and went, this isn't very good. And so I kind of like I think this is why so far I had only watched SG1 and then I had added Atlantis later. I watched it through only once, but then now I had watched Atlantis again, and now, of course, now that I finished Atlantis, I like want to rewatch Atlantis too.
Yeah.
But I had never ended up seeing Universe, and I think when we started this podcast, I said I really want to watch through Universe because I feel like, um, I mean, you don't realize it at the time, but you realize the more you hear people talk about things, how often people react to certain things because they have a certain expectation, and that I mean, I think it's kind of a no-win situation. If you're too much like the other thing, then you get accused of being too similar. But if you kind of try something different, then you're accused of not being on brand or whatever. Um, but yeah, so I did hear some things about it previously, but then I guess we can start seeing some of our impressions. Is that so far actually, I mean, I get that it has like a different tone, and maybe we can talk about that as well. And there's a different sort of way the characters relate to each other. We can also talk about that, but like I would say overall, I find it quite enjoyable, and it's an interesting addition. And um, I mean, I think for the time it was made, this was when this kind of shows were more common, and it's clearly a show that has more of a continuity between episodes rather than being like just episode of the week. um but I actually like I mean, so far I really enjoyed it. I think the characters are very interesting in a very different way from the other shows. And uh there's like some elements that are from Stargate that are familiar, like technologies, obviously like the Stargate and like the stones. But I think overall, um, it's something that is like fresh in terms of a Stargate show that doesn't have the same formula, but kind of
Mm-hmm.
expands the lore. So that's kind of my thoughts. What about both of you? What were some of your initial feelings about watching it?
Martin, I'll let you go first.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what to add to that because that was a pretty good summary of the show, I think. Um, I'm glad that they chose to try something different because, for better or worse, Atlantis pretty much uses the formula of SG-1, right? In terms of each week they go through the Stargate, there's an adventure or something happens within the city that is ancient related that they have to solve but it feels very familiar, the whole thing. And with Universe, I feel like I really like the tonal shift from the bright colors and the optimism of SG-1 and Atlantis versus just this dread and everybody being out of the depths and there's basically no hope. They're just stuck there. They don't know. They have no access. They have nothing. They're basically just surviving, and whatever the ship is doing, that is what's going to happen next, for better or worse, right? So, I feel like maybe that is why people didn't like it at the time, because it is just so different tonally. And in terms of how the story is told, how it is shot, because it is so dark, the colors, there's no colors ever, right? On Destiny itself, it is very, very dark and washed out, versus on the planets, then when you see green, all of a sudden you go, oh, that's so nice. Just like the characters feel, right? Oh, finally fresh air and actual fresh anything. So what was the question?
Yeah,
I got sidetracked.
Just your initial impression.
That was my sort of initial thing. If you go into it thinking it will be sort of a continuation of how the world was built and how the characters were built and how the characters interact like they were in the previous two shows, you're going to be very disappointed, I think. If that is your expectation, right? Like you said, but if you can look beyond that and stick with it, I think so far I really, really enjoy it, because it is something very different, but within very clearly the same universe.
Yeah.
That's my initial.
I think with myself, it's interesting because I do have there's a very dueling perspectives with it. I feel like it's weird. So when I very first watched it the first time, I remember very much so having a very, very similar view to what you guys are saying. And I'm not saying that I don't still, but I remember then thinking oh, I'm so glad it's not just a repeat. It's not just a repeat of a team that's going off, onto all these other planets, and they all kind of have a similar kind of dynamic and everything. I remember thinking I really liked that, and I really liked that it wasn't just a copy of the other shows. And so I was really excited about it. And I do remember overall having a memory of really, really liking the show. I don't fully remember how I felt going into the first few episodes, but I have a feeling that potentially, even though I liked it, it was initially kind of slow to enjoying it quite as much as then I did by the end of it all, because I remember being very disappointed when it was canceled. Really getting into the characters and things like that. So I do remember then having a very positive view of everything, and I was really surprised to hear people saying that they didn't like it. And I was honestly kind of frustrated, thinking, but why would you want the same thing on another show? Then it just didn't make sense to me, why some would just want that. However, going back this time straight from Atlantis, I definitely felt it was very, very hard for me to get into it. I went, because previously, I don't think I had went straight into the show from Atlantis. And then, so it's like this watch through where I'm going from SG1 and watching it in basically the correct order of then once Atlantis starts, I'm also still watching SG1 until SG, that till that ends, and then watching Atlantis until that ends, and then going into Universe. It's like, I think it makes this very kind of like strong like storyline and vibe that goes in your mind throughout. And so even though I knew that everything was going to be way different with Universe, like I knew that, something about it was like this jolt of like, oh my God, like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, it's very dark, it's very gloomy, it's very intense right off the bat. And while it completely makes sense that it is that way because of what's going on, there was part of me that really, really missed the lightness of Stargate Atlantis. And I think one of the things that I think me and Alyssa have at least mentioned a lot when we've chatted about like Atlantis and SG1 is how we really like how there's that, it's like they don't stay in the dark, dreary mode for too long. There's always humor to break it up. And
Yeah.
I don't feel yet up to episode 4 that is there. I do feel like Eli kind of plays a role of being kind of the humorous character, and I love him. He's like one of my faves. But everything else is so dark, so intense, so gloomy. Then I was just like, oh, I can see how people going into it are like, nope, not for me. Because not only does it go into that where it's really intense, and so that's a huge shift from the previous like shows, but it also just like immediately, like there's a sex scene, right? And that might not be for everyone. Like it's like in SG1 and Atlantis, it's like the most you ever see is like maybe someone kissing someone like really quickly. Like it doesn't go into like full out makeout sessions and all this stuff. And so if you think about it in terms of like families watching the show, maybe some wouldn't necessarily like want their little kids watching that if their kids were into the show. Not that I find an issue with it at all, but like I'm just like saying like that is also a shift because they never usually went into that in the other shows. So that's also quite different. So I can see how people that were really, really into the previous ones, then suddenly that all happens and like everything goes like those first 3 episodes are so intense. Well, really, so far up to the 4th episode, that's also intense. That's all as far as I've gotten. So yeah. So anyways, that was my initial thoughts. And but I'm not saying that I don't like it now. I do. It's just I feel like it's taking me time to kind of get into it. And I definitely felt like I'm starting to more so, but it's harder for me to feel like watching quite as often yet because it stays so dark and gloomy. And for me, when I watch things, like I watch all sorts of different kinds of shows, and some are really dark and gloomy, and I love stuff like that. But sometimes I need to take breaks, and so like if it doesn't break up on its own in the show itself, so I've been finding like I've been slower to watching it and stuff.
It's interesting though, because I now remembering that you watched it once already, and I know you don't remember everything, but I would say the one thing I was going to bring up as something about the show that particularly like benefits and drawbacks, I think in comparison to the other 2 shows, there's a bit more of a quality of wanting to see what happens next, because I think it's so driven by that. But I think the result is, and maybe I'm completely wrong because I also haven't seen everything, but my guess is going to be that this show will have less rewatchability. Like that once you watch it through, that it isn't quite as rewarding to rewatch it. I think part of that is just the time. Like that time period was really focused on those kind of shows where the whole point of it was to get you to keep watching the next episode. And so the driving force behind everything is, oh, what happens next and how does everything happen? But I think as a result, a little bit of like, like, I mean, you can watch a SG1 episode knowing completely what happens, and part of the enjoyment of watching it is some of the weirdness that happens in it. And I think that in Universe, so much of the focus is the plot and what happens next, that it removes a little bit of that.
Out of curiosity, I mean, I'm very bad with timelines. Like there was 2009-ish, 10-ish,
Yes.
right? What like it was that the era of like 24 and Prison Break and those shows?
It was
Or
it was after, but it was it was like around the time when I think a lot of like overall shows were starting to get darker, probably in a result like kind of responding to that. But also I think it was when Netflix binging was starting to kind of be a thing, that kind of, so I think it was partially,
well, it should certainly worked on us, the binging part.
yeah, well, to be fair, like I had a migraine for a whole day, and so like I could not move, and that's why I watched so many episodes of it. So that's why I'm like further ahead, because I could not work, I could not do anything. But like I think that aspect of it, like it makes you want to watch the next episode. But I think so. I think it can make it you watch it more. But I think in terms of rewatchability, I think like it would be,
Yeah, I'm curious to see,
yeah, that's my
because
prediction. But
yeah, no, I agree with the rewatchability. I have a feeling, you know, like we just finished Atlantis, but I wouldn't mind to just watch it again right now, right? But at least so far, the universe is, for lack of a better word, sort of draining as a viewer, that I'm not sure I could do it so soon again. Never mind, if you know the story, is it worth watching it again? Because if you know where it's going, then all the suspense is gone from one episode to the next. But yeah.
What it kind of reminds me of, because I watch like a ton of other shows a lot of times, and it kind of reminds me of like if I think of like if you think of genres of shows where there's kind of like that same storyline but different, and not as Stargate, but like is like, for example, I had started watching Castle, which is like a crime kind of show, but obviously it also has the element of humor with the dynamic between the two characters. So a lot of times it will show like gruesome murder scenes, but it's also like there's a lot of humor within the show, so you don't feel like afterwards like drained that you've watched all these murder, like a murder scene, and all these like things with that. Versus other times I've watched shows that involve like murder scenes and stuff, and it stays really intense throughout because it takes more of that storyline into how it probably actually would be, in all honesty. And you feel that throughout. And while it's still like a really good show, like whatever show it may be, like you just kind of feel that. But so I think in the sense of like universe, like I mean, it doesn't a really good job in terms of kind of putting you there and putting you there in the mindsets of like, it's so like intense in the beginning, like, and it just keeps going. And immediately it's like there's kind of like dynamics between characters that you're trying to figure out like what's going on between them, because it's like, some of them seem to really hate each other, some of them seem to be having affairs, some of them seem to, all sorts of things are going on that you're kind of tossed in the middle of people's lives, and you don't really know, you kind of feel a little disoriented. And so I think in that sense, like probably the feelings we're getting from feeling drained from a show and things like that are also almost intentional in a sense, because you're feeling how you're, what those characters are going through. I'm kind of curious to see, I mean, you guys have seen up to like episode 16, right?
something
I think
like that,
you said, without giving away anything, because I've only seen up to episode 4 so far.
It
Do you
doesn't light up.
feel it doesn't lighten up? Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. Because I
But
couldn't remember if it did.
I would also say in terms of like the characters, all my initial feelings with the character, like I don't think you will find much a change of how you feel about the characters if you're already on episode 4. I think I think there were some characters where I changed my feelings between episode 1 and 4, but by the time then, yeah, like I think you're pretty set in, like if you said, I don't know, maybe again, I haven't seen everything, maybe things change way later on. But yeah, it's pretty intense, and I think like that's kind of maybe part of it, is that then you watch the next one. It'll be interesting to see. Something I was thinking about, because I know a lot of people talk about the tone, but something I also read recently when I was kind of looking at, people's opinions of Universe, is a lot of people were saying that, they wanted a show that was kind of Alien of the Week or Planet of the Week. And I wonder to what extent people that are like, the reason people watch Stargate in the first place, how that impacts their perception of it. Because I would guess that someone who is more interested in the character development in the Stargate series might respond more favorably to Universe, especially because so much of the focus, I mean, when you really think about it, when you remove everything, so much of the focus is actually the character interactions and development and how they deal with the situation they're in. Like, I mean, like you said, they're thrown into this situation. But I think if you were, for example, someone who didn't watch it for that, like you really watch it because you want to see a new planet every week, I could see where it would get kind of like, you don't like it as much. And so I could see where that particular audience that's looking for that, where it wouldn't be what they're looking for. But I think maybe I would be almost curious, like asking the viewers, if you're more interested in the character interactions and like relationships between the characters and how they, how the characters developed and grew and reacted to things, did you perceive Universe more favorably?
Yeah, that'd be interesting, because I definitely see people always talking about it in like Facebook groups and stuff, where either people really defend the show and love it to people really hating it. And I think there's maybe been one time I've seen someone post that initially they hated it, and now going back to it, they feel like it was like ahead of its time and that they liked it going back to it now. And so it is interesting. What you're mentioning, Alyssa, kind of actually reminded me of a question I have for you guys. Is, so I think it's in the first episode, or maybe the first and second episode, I can't fully remember, where you see O'Neill, right? And they bring in his character. But I personally feel the O'Neill they show in this show is not the O'Neill everyone knows and loves. I feel like he's so serious in this, and he doesn't feel like O'Neill to me. Like, he physically is him, but he feels very, very different, because normally O'Neill has, like, even when in the serious moments, he has some like snarky remark to make, and there was none of that, from what I can remember. So I felt like that was part of the weirdness too, is you're seeing these familiar characters, but they don't feel the same, at least in my opinion. Like, how did you guys feel when it showed him?
I'm not sure I thought anything of it, but it was such a small, it was like a really quick interaction. And I think in that moment, I mean, that was with Eli, right? I think at the time I was still like, what the heck? Like, I mean, again, I'd never seen it. So maybe I process, like, having seen it, maybe you process it a little bit differently if you know already kind of what happened. But maybe in that moment, I was more focused on, okay, what's going on with this guy? Like that O'Neill's at his house. Like he just did some, so maybe like in the moment I was thinking more about what's happening. And it kind of
wasn't there, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And it took the focus away from that, I think.
Because wasn't there like a second time they showed him, like in the first few episodes, where it was once
with
they
the
were
stones,
stuck? Yeah. And it was there that I felt like it really didn't feel like him.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I'm trying to remember that interaction, because he comes back in a later episode as well, and there certainly was some of his trademark humor and snarkiness.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I'm just not sure which scene you're talking about specifically. But also, I mean, if we think about the position he is in, I mean, he just basically lost an entire planet. Lots of people died, and a sizable group of people that weren't supposed to go to Destiny had to evacuate there, right? So he must be under a lot of stress and pressure from the IOA, from the Pentagon, from the president, from everybody, just to fix it. And there's
Yeah.
nothing he can do. So it's probably a really tough situation, and just, you know, he's processing it, that the humor just doesn't come through
Yeah.
yet. Later on, I think we see him at least one or two more times. That even though it's still more dark and intense version, he has his little quibs, or, you know, overwrites somebody with, you know, common sense, you
Yeah.
know, where
I,
the, you
I
know,
mean,
that kind of thing.
yeah, because I think like I get like story wise, it makes total sense. Of course, he's, you know, not going to be cracking jokes during that time. It's just more of like something about how things were delivered. Like it just felt very different to how I had seen that character in the previous shows, even in very serious times, because the very serious times in like other shows are very different than the serious times in Stargate Universe. And gosh, there's something else I was going to say, but it totally left me. If it comes back to me, I'll let you guys know. But yeah.
But yeah,
I
that's
can't
interesting
remember.
because to be honest, I actually hadn't thought about it at all. I think because of the focus being so much on, oh, what's happening. So I wonder, like, I mean, maybe if I saw it again, then I would think about that, because that's actually an interesting thought of like, oh, how is O'Neill? Is he this, like, how are the characters, the repeating characters different? Because I think, I mean, I haven't seen
I
all
think
the
I remembered what I was going to say. Yeah.
Okay, oh, say it.
I was just gonna say that, like, but it's kind of off topic of that slightly, so I don't know, but I'll just say anyways, but go back to what you were saying a second ago once I say this, but is some of like the darker moments of, because I was thinking of like other characters and stuff, and like how, like I was saying how O'Neill's vibe was different, is one thing I was kind of comparing like the darkness of Stargate Universe to, in terms of like maybe how, when we've seen that kind of vibe on like Stargate on SG1 or whatever, was like, and I don't remember the name of the episode, but remember the episode when they were they forgot who they were, and they were like stuck in those like mines or whatever, and they had to constantly work, and like the whole like environment was very dark and gloomy. Things felt very kind of like tough, right? Like, and it kind of, and like even like, you know, with Carter and everything, like everything was very serious. But then that gets broken up a little bit throughout that episode, but like for the most part everything kind of had a very similar like tone to Stargate Universe in a sense, but it just doesn't stay there, right? It's just kind of like for that one episode. So yeah. You look like you're going to say something, Alyssa.
Oh, I was trying to think, like, oh, I think all I was going to say before you split is that I know there's other crossovers I haven't seen yet. So I think there's other characters from Stargate, and it will be interesting to see, because now that you mention it, I'll probably actually think about it, if the characters when they come back are similar or different. But on that note, what I was going to say is, since we're kind of talking about characters, one of the things I thought would be interesting to explore, since we've been introduced to pretty much the entire cast at this point, is how we feel about the characters. Are there some we love? Are there some we hate?
Yeah. I will struggle to remember some names, so you guys might need to remind me who is who, but or
no
maybe
worries,
I'll try and pull up something that shows me who is who.
So maybe Martin, we can start with you. If you want to just go over some of the main characters, I mean, and of course, like, we can kind of
well,
interject.
I'm gonna stick to the main characters, because I'm not sure how much of the character development is up to episode 4 of some of the side characters that I know about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that is later. But of course, you love to hate Rush. There's just something about this character that's brilliant. Um, I think, I mean, overall, with all the main characters, and I've been thinking about it because something that was mentioned a couple minutes ago, and I'm not quite sure if it goes into the positive or the negative for me. It is one of those things that just occurred to me that every single character, maybe Eli is separate from that, but everybody else seems to be extremely damaged. Like everybody. Like Rush, and once you learn what his backstory is, extremely damaged. Young, extremely damaged. The medical officer, whose name I forget, also
TJ.
seems to TJ also seems to be having some issues that we don't quite know about yet. And down the list you go, right? So that it's just doesn't seem to be anybody that kind of has it together. On a personal level, professionally
Yeah.
it's different, but on a personal level, they're all so, yeah, even Scott. So he is so professional, and he is giving his all to, save people, and he's going beyond to do the thing that needs to be done no matter what. But then when you learn about his background and the damage there, or Sergeant Greer, it is brutal. It's just, it doesn't matter. Whenever you go into the backstories, it's kind of like, oh my God, holy, you
So
know?
just,
Yeah.
yeah,
I know none of this is in the first 4 episodes, so I won't say what it is, but it's
yeah,
I
but I mean,
it's just so dark,
just to
you
refresh
know?
us on which the main characters are. No, because
Okay,
I mean,
sorry.
I
Yes.
completely agree with you, because I realized Emily asked and you were wondering. So I'm just going to say Nicholas Rush,
Mm-hmm.
Everett Young, Matthew Scott,
Mm-hmm.
Chloe Armstrong, Eli Wallace, Tamara Johnson, and Ronald Greer and Camille Ray
Mm-hmm.
are all considered the main characters. So I
Yes.
think those are kind of the ones we can get into here.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. And I actually don't even think that necessarily a lot of it is in the later episodes. I think you get images of it already in the very beginning of each
Yes, you get
character.
sort of an idea of all of that. Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I really like obviously Eli is fighting some battles
Mhm.
with, which is related to his mom, mostly. But he is sort of the O'Neill in the sense that no matter how dark he gets, he has something stupid to say. Or he quotes some movie or some show that nobody else, because they're so professional, has seen or knows what the hell he's talking about. So I just kind of love that the energy he brings to lighten everything up when
Yeah.
nobody else can see the light or something stupid, and he just quotes Planet of the Apes, or I think that was in the second or third episode, like over and over again, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, for sure.
So in terms of that is the one thing where I'm not sure going down the line with the next, season, how I will feel about the characters at the end. Like that there's nobody who had a decent anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, but yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, I think what you brought up is something kind of interesting, because I think right away, other than maybe Eli, I have to say, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me your impression, Emily, but I feel like nobody really comes off as overly likable. Like in terms of, oh my God, I mean, likable in the sense of, oh, that's an interesting character. I really like the character, but their personality, like as someone like you would personally like I think they're all excellent characters. Like I think for that reason, because they're so uncomfortable in a way. Eli comes off immediately as like, oh my God, you really like him. There's only one character I really don't like. But otherwise, like I think I kind of, like even Rush, I love the character. Even though like he has some problems, I find his character super fascinating. So, and it's like interesting to watch. But Emily, I'd be curious, what are some of your thoughts on characters?
Yeah, so I pulled up a picture of the characters so I actually know their names. So yeah, it's interesting because of having this be a second time through universe, even though I really don't remember anything. I really don't. I do always remember Eli and Rush. They always stood out in my mind. I always remembered that I loved both of those characters. Rush is obviously way more complicated, and I do remember from last time going back and forth with like, oh my god, I hate this guy, oh my god, I love this guy. Like it's like, you know, one big mind f. But like and with Eli, it's like, I think it cracks me up that it's like his whole way of getting into this thing was because he was playing a freaking video game. like he's
true, right?
incredibly smart, right? Like and you know, he knows a lot, and people don't give him credit for what he does know. They just kind of treat him like crap, at least in the beginning. But like so yeah, sorry, I'm kind of getting sidetracked. So what was the question? My initial thoughts of some of the main characters. So Eli, I've always liked. Rush, again, always liked, even though he's iffy most of the time. I remember disliking this character in particular even last time because it just gives me an ick feeling, and it's Everett Young. I do not like him. I've never liked him. And he just irritates me every time I see him. Like not the actual like guy and like the character itself, because I just feel like that character gives me a massive ick. And it's like just every time he's within the storyline, I'm just like, like, I don't know. I don't like this guy. So he's one that and then it's like, because I haven't gotten too far into the episodes yet, just got up to episode 4, it's kind of like, I think you said it perfectly, Alyssa, where you said you don't necessarily, none of them are really all that likable. Like, it's like no one like really stood out to me. Like, it's like when you watch like Atlantis or you watch SG1, it's like immediately you have people like, you're like, oh, I really love this person, or this person's great, or your views might change on the person as like the story progresses, but like it feels more solid. This definitely feels like I get the ick factor from a lot of the characters in terms of their character. And I can't like pinpoint someone that like I really, really like. But I'm assuming that will change as I continue to watch it, and there continues to be more that comes out with those characters. I'm interested to hear of Ronald Greer. I'm interested about his backstory, which I have not heard yet, because he just seems like such an ass. Like there's something about him that like I can tell like there's more to it. But it's just like I go back and forth with him like kind of irritating me and not. And then I did hear a little bit of the backstory of Matthew Scott. And I go back and forth with his character too. Like it's a lot of back and forth, I think, is what it is with the initial characters. Besides Eli, I like Eli.
It's interesting because I totally think that's how it's you're supposed to feel. It's funny because with Greer, I remember right away, I just had this feeling like Greer is going to be this character that they really present him as a hothead, but like he's, like some people they're presented as nice, but then they're like really scheming. I think there's like literally nothing to Greer that you don't see in that sense. And so I feel like it's one of those characters that kind of comes off more, like aggressive or something, but he's really like teddy bear. And that was kind of like my first impression of Greer. Scott,
just sorry about Greer, that he's loyal to a fault, to his cause. That's sort of the impression I got. Right? He is like when it comes to the military and the military structure, like the hierarchy within, that he knows his place and he is loyal to that. So that's the impression I got, and that, of course, from a civilian point of view, is not necessarily a good thing, because the lack of thinking and thinking ahead kind of thing. But yeah, that was my initial impression anyway. Sorry, I just want to interject that. So go ahead.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just gonna say the one character that annoys me is Chloe. Like annoys the
when I
living.
was trying to figure out who you were getting annoyed by, I did suspect her actually.
Yeah, like she's the one that irritates me the most. And like maybe that's the character you're supposed to be irritated by. I don't know. But like she just seems so manipulative and like annoying and everything. So I don't like her.
Well, it's funny because.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
It's just real fast. It's funny because Alyssa, in a text before we ever got on here and spoke about it, you had told me that there was a particular character you did not like, but you didn't tell me who. And during that time, I was then watching the show, and it was forget which episode this was in, but it was the episode where she kept like whining to Eli that he needed to be there while she takes a shower. Yes. I think that was her, right? And I was just like, when I saw that scene, I'm just like, I bet you it's Chloe that Alyssa's irritated by.
Yes. Oh my God. Eli, she's so mean to him. Anyways, go on. Martin, go on.
Well, I think what I was going to say is, like, Eli, the character, I think was designed to feel like it could be any of us, like the viewer could be in a position like
Good
it
point,
is. I mean, he's this nerd, never mind his extraordinary abilities, but he is this nerd who likes computer games, who was swept up in this, right? And Chloe is sort of it's sort of the same story as Eli. She was just there and she was swept up in this, right? But there's something so, like, my feelings on her were, initially I felt really sorry for her because she was like the aide or the secretary or whatever it was officially to her dad, who was the senator. So she was in this position where everybody would think, well, she is not smart, she's not intelligent, she has nothing to bring to the table. She has to work for her father, who is the senator, of course, right? Like this nepotistic position that she got. So I kind of felt sorry for her to be in that shadow, and everybody thought, well, thought less of her because it was her father. If it was any other senator, whatever, but it was her father, so that's not good. And then right away, her father has to sacrifice himself to save her and the crew, at least for another day. So you feel really sorry for her. And I don't know if it is within the first 4 episodes that she goes back to Earth to tell the mom or not. But you feel really sorry because that scene is so well done and it's crushing.
Yeah.
But then everything past that, like the shower scene with Eli and her and Scott and the interaction with all those people, is kind of like, why?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't understand the need for her to be there, like on a story level even. I guess that's my main problem. Never mind if she's likable or not, but so far every character, main or side, they have a reason to be there, to contribute something to the story or to solve a problem or this or that. But so far, what is her, raison d'être before the show? I mean, maybe this was still gonna come, but again, we are 16 episodes in, and there was exactly one time where she was useful. Sorry.
I mean, I've only seen up to episode 4, so I don't really have like one way or the other with her for some reason. Like, I mean, it's interesting because seeing this show now, I've also watched a more current show, like sci-fi show that one of the showrunners of Stargate did, which was The Ark. And some of this show actually kind of reminds me of that show.
Really? Okay.
There's something about it that some of the intensity kind of reminds me of that show, yet that show is also different than this, but there's elements of it that remind me of it. And so the Chloe character kind of reminds me of a character in the arc that's kind of this entitled character that people kind of just think like, why are you here? You just got here because of your money, blah, blah, blah. And but the character in the arc, for example, really shifts and changes throughout the seasons that you grow to really like her. And so I think having seen that show and then getting a similar vibe from Chloe, I guess part of me just kind of assumed like maybe she'll be more likable as I continue. Like I just thought she seemed kind of spoiled. And I did feel really, I mean, that's horrific what she had to experience with her dad, like sacrificing himself, and all of that is horrible, right? I do think it's genius how they're using the stones to kind of like bring an element of having these characters go back to people on Earth. Like that's, I think, really genius. Like that's a really cool way of kind of connecting them in that sense with like other characters too, like the one guy that always switches bodies with the other guy. I don't know what his name is. I forget.
Telford.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
the guy who really hates Young and wants to take over the ship for some reason.
Yeah. He's really intense, but something about him I like. I don't know why.
Maybe because Young gives you the ick and he's against Young.
Probably. Like I wouldn't be against the other guy like switching places. Yeah.
Well,
probably. I think like I just really don't like the
stones.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, I think too, just like the dynamic of Young and the girl that's is she a doctor? Tamara is it Johansson?
TJ. Yeah, I really like.
She's a medic. She's not a doctor.
Okay.
Part of her, she was supposed to have left to study to be a doctor, but stayed behind and then was swept up in all this.
Like, I know that there's more to her story with the young dude that has not been revealed yet in up to episode 4.
Coming shortly.
But their dynamic really pisses me off. I just don't like it. I don't like that she's involved with him. I just don't like it. And because so I feel like, yeah, he gives me the ick. I mean, even the way she was looking at Rush when he woke up after being exhausted, I'm just like, go with Rush. You don't need to go with Young. Like, go with Rush.
Yeah, totally. Actually, that would be a night. I would ship that.
Like, I mean, he's really screwed in the head, but go with Rush. He's better than Young. Like, but yeah, so I think like with her, I like, but I just don't like her with Young. So it's like I get irritated by the two of them right now because I just don't like that.
No, Martin, what about you? Like, how do
I forgot the original question. Sorry.
Do any characters give you the ick? I think is what. No,
is that what we're going with? The ick factor. What kind of ick is the question, I guess. I mean, Russian gives me the ick in the sense, and I really like this about how he was written and how he's portrayed by the actor. It's brilliant, if you ask me. That even now, I am not sure what his motivation is. Like, we're almost an entire season through, and I have no idea what this guy is actually about. Like, I really, really, really like it. That he obviously has an agenda. He obviously is working very hard towards something, right? And he doesn't care who he hurts on the way there, who he has to, trample upon, get rid of, whatever it is. And especially in the environment on the Destiny where resources are so limited, he still doesn't care, right? He will make enemies. He will say the wrong thing or say nothing, even though if he just said why he was doing it, it would have been okay. It would have been great, but it would have been understood, right? And so I don't want to give spoilers, but that this is what I really like. You don't know why he's doing the thing that he is doing. or what the end goal is, where he thinks he needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know yet. Is he the bad guy, quote unquote, or what it is? So in that sense, whenever he's on screen, I get this feeling there's more to it than we know. There's more to it than we might ever know. So,
Yeah.
But
so
are
in
there
that
any
case,
Oh, sorry.
so I don't know if that is ick. It's just there's this like feeling about him, right?
Yeah,
In
he's
terms of
very
ick,
intense. Yeah.
in terms of at least the first couple episodes of ick, it's Tadford. Can't stand the guy. Drives me nuts. The
Who?
guy, the colonel that swatches places
The
with
one you
Young,
like, Emily.
the one
Oh,
you like,
really?
can't stand him. Can't stand him because he's so by the book.
True. Yeah.
And I don't know the relationship between him and Young. Obviously, there's something going on because they hate each other to the core. But to think, if I think about the situation, they're stuck on the ship. The ship is falling apart. Nobody's supposed to be there. They don't understand anything. They don't have control. They don't have resources. They don't have anything. They're just trying to stay alive, literally, one more day. And then this guy comes in, and the first thing he does, he locks up Greer because of something he did on the planet. He just locks him up, even though they're understaffed, they
Yeah.
have nothing. There is no reason for that right now. It really doesn't matter if Greer is locked up or not. He could help carry some heavy shit around.
Yeah.
You have an able-bodied soldier that will follow orders, at least Young's orders. And the first thing he does is lock him up.
Mhm.
Made no sense. He's trying to undermine everything Young did. He's trying, it's kind of like, you're not there, you're going to leave. You don't have to live there and work with those people. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. I understand. I don't know which episode it is, so I can't go there, but never mind. I understand them wanting to, solve the situation, activate the gate, or turn destiny around, but it's done in such a way that I really hate that.
Yeah.
Really, really, really. It seems so counterproductive
Mhm.
to the
Yeah.
situation where, again, they have no access to the ship. He doesn't have any answers. Rush literally
Yeah.
is the best person for the job, and he's there and trying.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nobody else that can do it. And he just goes and makes weird rules and it,
Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't feel like he's a character that I'm like, oh yeah, I agree with what he's trying to do there. Like not at all. Like he's annoying in that sense for sure, but I don't know. I just prefer him over Young, so I'm just like...
Yeah.
yeah.
And Camille, I really like. Like, I think her character is complicated. The IOA one.
Yeah.
Like, I think, she's in that weird position of like kind of like a Woolsey character where, she does disagree with the media. There's the civilian agenda, obviously, and her character, doesn't always make the best decisions, sometimes make better decisions, but I think it's a really multi-dimensional character that I really like.
So, is that the same character, this Camille person that was in Atlantis with Woolsey when she was trying to take his job in that one episode?
I don't think so.
Or is that it's not the same actress?
No.
Hang on, I'm just gonna check.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Like I wasn't sure. I couldn't quite remember the face of the actress in Atlantis.
I
think that's a different actress. They do look very similar, but I think that's a different actress.
Yeah.
I can't quite picture her. It would have been a cool sort of crossover.
Yeah,
so maybe that's why.
she's only from Stargate Universe.
Okay.
But yeah.
Unless is she playing that same character?
That's what I was wanting. I think that's what he was trying to figure out, but no.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay. Well, I don't know in the first 4 episodes how much she has to do, so I don't remember. I think the things I'm thinking of is later on. But yeah, no, she's great.
Yeah.
Some questionable decisions later on, but
I mean, I think that's
understandable decisions.
I think to me
in
that's
the bigger picture.
That's something I really appreciate about the show is that everybody makes questionable decisions. Like I think someone described Stargate in some like forum post as competence porn. Like basically that everybody in the show is just too competent. And I think in Universe, everybody is kind of average. You know, there's some people that are maybe better than others at their job, but overall everyone makes poor decisions. Nobody is right all the time. They're all making mistakes. And that aspect about it, I actually think it's really, I mean, I think if I were to say, okay, well, there's a Stargate formula that is even more prominent than Monster of the Week, I would say it's really competent people solving an impossible problem. And I don't really, I see in Universe, it's more of moderately competent people trying to figure out how to solve impossible problems and screwing up a lot. And that there is,
well, it's more human, right? It's more
exactly
realistic. Yeah.
So that aspect I actually really enjoy.
Yes.
Not that I don't like, I love in Stargate that they in
That Carter saves the day.
Yeah, I mean that you love that, but it's also nice to have this other aspect of it that's totally different, and that I would say is something I really like.
So one thing that I thought was interesting is like after I had watched up to episode 3, which was like the 3-parter, I had wrote down a note of how I was like feeling about that episode at the time because I knew I probably wouldn't remember.
Well, that's
and
a good
like
idea.
for me, like what I noticed I felt like by that point, and keep in mind, part of this is just how I am with shows. It's not against the show itself. It's just I have to be in certain like mindsets and moods to feel like watching certain types of shows. And I think with Universe, I was really initially struggling to feel like watching a dark and dreary show, but I really wanted to get watching Universe. And so I think that was part of it. But I had wrote down that like I felt quite bored through episode 3 until it got near the end and it picked up. And then one thing that really like stood out to me was the score, the music score.
Yeah.
I was gonna
I
mention it
loved
too.
like the intense scene near the end. I really liked the music in that. And then a note that I made, I think this is why I made a note, was that it's the first time that I can remember in all of Stargate stuff that they use licensed music. They used a like a song, you know,
Other
not
than
from
other
like
than other than Vegas, right?
yeah, other than that one, yeah. But
Exactly.
I just mean
Yeah, it's funny
yeah,
because when we were talking about Vegas, that's something that we mentioned, and I remember you saying something about Universe and the music. And I think
yeah.
I almost wondered, was that like a little bit of a like dip into that? Because I think
Oh,
you're totally
yeah.
right, because I was about to say the same thing when you were mentioning the soundtrack. I was thinking, yeah, and also they use pop music. And that's really, it's very
Yeah.
jarring. And it was jarring in Vegas, but here it's like
Yeah.
consistent, right? It's
Well,
not an off
because
episode.
yeah, because they use like just the regular like film score by the composer, right? The whole way through. And then it has the intense scene where that score really picks up. And I believe it's at the very end, the final scene, where then they bring in the other music. You know, I can't remember
Yep.
what song it was. I didn't write that down, but like, you know, it was clearly not something that the composer did. It was like a singer and stuff. Like it was the first time that they used something like that.
Okay, I think we're all I now I remember something. We're all wrong, but this is interesting. They have used licensed music before in SG-1, and it was in the episode Unending.
Was it really?
Yes,
Yeah, you're right.
where they're trapped on a ship.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah,
weird. I wonder if
but
that's intentional.
it's funny because something I was thinking about, like this is crazy, and now I'm kind of wondering, like, maybe they were cooking this a while, because I was thinking when I was watching Universe, gosh, I wonder like if either they got the idea for this like when they were making Unending, or if like it kind of gave the idea of it. Because in a way it's super similar to Unending except with a bunch more people. And it's funny then that you mentioned the licensed music, and then Unending is like the only SG-1 episode, I think it has to be the only one that ever used licensed music, right? because you said it didn't really appear. And the only other episode I could think of was Vegas. And that was so intentionally to be different, right? So I don't think in Unending it was used in that way. But it's very interesting because it was a very, yeah, now that I think about that. I don't know what that means, but that's interesting.
Well, I think too, it also gives a vibe of like, I feel like a lot of shows like now, like, I mean, it's kind of went back to now. I feel like there's a lot of like I mean, there's always film composers scoring music for shows, but I feel like film scoring in shows and movies went through like a period of time where it was so purposely like not noticed. Like you're always told it shouldn't be noticed, blah 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 blah. And then I remember like when I was still at the university, I remember them talking about like the new Blade Runner movie that was out at the time, and how that really changed like a lot of things in scores where suddenly everything was like in your face again. Like the score, like the music was just like supposed to be like really noticed and kind of like a feature of the film itself. And so like I kind of feel like in series shows, like I feel like there was a period of time where they didn't really have much of like that orchestral, like very like noticed like music where like and they used a lot of music from like, you know, pop music or other genres like that were used in shows. And so yes, maybe sci-fi doesn't fully dip into that quite as much, but I feel like maybe that's also part. I mean, it was very intentional. Like I don't know like how often they use, like, do you guys know, like, since you've seen up to episode 16, do they use a lot more like commercial like music that okay, like because yeah, there might be a reason for it. I don't know.
It's interesting because what you brought up, and I mean, I think it reminds me of the soundtrack of House, because the House is all piano and string and it's very subtle, right? And I think this is kind of how Universe is. It's also around the same time period. But the formula of this is very similar to House because a lot of times they'll have this pop song playing at the end of the episode when like things are kind of going on and then they're like cutting between the characters and whatever. And I think that's what happened. I mean, in the beginning of Universe, but I think it's kind of like a almost, I don't want to say like a formula, but it's like a formula that I think a lot of shows used. So I mean, yeah, I think you're completely right that the soundtrack, I mean, compared to Atlantis or SG1, the soundtrack is so subtle. I mean, Martin, what were your impressions of the soundtrack?
I really, really love the intro, the theme, basically.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I just love it. It is so perfect. Right? This piano thing, then the strings, and then the heavy distorted guitar comes in. You know, it's
I have to
it's
re-listen
something.
to it because I
It is
don't
so
fully
good
remember.
because
Yeah.
it you know, I mean, with SG1 and Atlantis, they do a lot of sort of leitmotif kind of thing. You know, you hear a snippet, a melody or a part, you know, something, and you know, oh, that's a ghoul theme. Something sinister is coming, even, you know, or you know, this is Jack's theme, so he is around the corner, or whatever. You know, that there's things that did with the music, even though it might not have been shown on screen, you immediately knew, you know, something bad is about to happen when that, you know, that weird ghoul thing came in, and you knew something was going to happen, and then it happens, right? Um, uh, it seems like, at least I haven't. I mean, I'm very bad at this to start with soundtracks, so do do tell me if I'm wrong. But so far, at least, I don't get that same sense of the soundtrack of Universe. It seems much more atmospheric. It paints an emotional picture, but it's not like there's a theme for, you know, young, or you know, it's
Yeah.
more like you know, yeah, I don't know, like atmospheric, for lack of a better word. It's painting the emotion, but not that they will reuse that to evoke the same emotion again later. Like it's more, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, because you guys have seen more episodes, that seems to be then you would know that they're not going to use it later because you've seen those episodes and they haven't
Well,
then, right?
to be fair, I'm very bad at picking that up on like a first run because I get too emotionally
Right.
invested in the whole, so I don't really pay attention to
Yeah.
those things. That just this is what it feels like when I think about it right now, but I haven't actively listened to figure out those things. Like it is very
Yeah.
obvious in SG1 that those themes exist because over 10 seasons we've heard them hundreds of times, right? In various permutations. So even I pick up on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Alyssa is way better at this, so you should ask her about the soundtrack of Universe.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's an interesting observation. And I think it's a kind of goes back to Emily, what you were saying about that the soundtrack overall, it tends to be more subtle, like the actual written score. And then the part that is really emotional, it's usually the pop ballad or the sad song or whatever comes in at the end. And
I mean, at the music that I mentioned that was at the end that I wrote in my notes for episode 3, that was definitely not subtle, like the orchestral part of that end bit, because it was a very intense thing that was happening. And that I really liked. Like but maybe that's part of it, is that like there is like a subtleness with the other aspects of it, so then you notice like those bigger moments more, but yeah, I mean, I really like the music in Universe as well. I feel like I need to see more of the episodes to kind of notice how like they actually have the score throughout, like the episodes and stuff. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Like sometime we really got to like break down like SG1, Atlantis, and Universe music. Like that'd be fun.
Oh, totally. No, I completely agree. Because so far I've loved all the soundtracks. I think they're, and it's funny because I have to say in Universe, sometimes you can hear elements of like some of the piano themes from SG1 that I think were like later on. Like you can definitely hear a little bit of like the touches of that, like some of the.
I mean, it was brilliant. Sorry, the second episode of what must have been the first episode actually, where we're on Cheyenne Mountain, and it's a very, very large variation on the theme, but it was very clearly an SG1 theme. Whenever they showed a mountain or they're going to SG command, to the SGC, there's a theme that they always used in the show, and they used it, but just enough that you get the flavor of it, but it wasn't a theme. And I thought that was so beautifully done because it immediately brought back all of SG1 for me. So that made me very happy.
Yeah. It is interesting how it's like, I feel like Stargate music is very like nostalgic because like after I finished Atlantis, and then you guys hadn't started Universe yet at that point, and then we were about to talk about the end of Atlantis. So then I rewatched or skimmed through like some of the last few episodes of Atlantis. And when I did that and I heard the theme and I heard the music, I was just like, oh my gosh, I miss Atlantis so much. Like, and then like, it's just like, it gives you like this, like, I think that's what also kind of like always pulls me to wanting to watch it too. Like the music like pulls me into it so much. Like, is it actually, I was going to ask you guys, do you know if it's the same, is it the same or different composer for SGU?
Same.
No.
Is it? Okay.
At least it was, that's, I swore I saw it in the credits. Let me just check.
Gosh,
they must really be, because I saw Goldsmith in there.
Yeah, that's who did SG1 in Atlantis.
Really? I thought he just composed the original theme.
No. That's actually wrong.
He's the series
it
composer.
Was somebody else that composed. Yeah. Joel Goldsmith.
Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith was the composer for the. I'm getting confused because I know
David Arnold. This is David Arnold composed the music for the original 94 Stargate film, and his music was later adapted for the SG1 series main title theme.
Yes.
Joel
Okay.
Goldsmith, he was the primary composer for SG-1 and later for its spin-off Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe. And someone named Neil Acri also contributed to the series soundtrack, particularly in its later seasons and in the spin-off series.
But
So
yes,
that's
for sure.
interesting. Yeah.
But yes, for sure, Goldsmith did work on Universe. I just get like,
Okay.
I was confused because unfortunately there's like a father and a son, and one is Jerry and one is Joel, and I could never like sort in my brain. But it looks like both of them actually worked a bit on Stargate, so maybe that's why
Yeah.
it was confused in my brain, is that they were both working on it.
Gosh, imagine how much money he's made in royalties. Dang. When royalties actually made some money, but not anymore.
I mean, yeah, there's two of them, I think. Like the father and it looks like both.
Oh, that's cool.
It's crazy. Yeah, that is totally crazy. But yeah, I love all the Stargate soundtracks. So
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, I think that was kind of like a nice sort of introduction to the, I mean, I know there's so much to talk about. We'll have to like get into it later as we get further in, and some sort of thematic themes emerge. But I think it's interesting that, you know, we kind of have some similarities and some differences how we responded. I think it's really cool that each of us kind of have different characters that we love or hate or something. I think that's an interesting.
Everybody loves Eli. I mean,
yeah, of course, but like, I mean, Eli's like,
how could you not, you know?
Yeah, but I think it's so interesting that when it comes to the other characters, that probably we all engage with them a little bit differently and have different, you know, feelings about which ones give us the ick or which ones we really like and which ones we kind of love to hate versus which ones we actually just don't like. And I think that's actually telling to really good writing of characters, that it didn't just push everybody into one direction of,
it's not trying to force you who to like.
Yeah, and it's not clear. And I mean, I have to say, even as far as in We Are, I mean, this isn't a spoiler, but it's more like, you know, I still can't tell you, maybe I'm just very thick, but I mean, I can't tell you who is supposed to be the main hero, or is there one, or is it the ship? Who is the main enemy, or is there one? Like, I think, you know, whereas I think in SG-1 or Atlantis, I mean, Atlantis right away, I mean, of course, there's the issue of the city, but immediately you run into the Wraith. It's very clear from the very beginning, main antagonist of the series will be the Wraith. And you kind of meet the four characters, and they're very clearly like, you know, the heroes. The main characters of Universe, I don't think are quite so clear of whether they're heroes or not. And I think that's really fascinating.
So. Yeah, everything's very unclear, but in a well-written way, if that makes sense. Like, everything's very unclear. That's a good point, because like yeah, now that we've talked about it a lot, like, I'm excited to like watch some more episodes.
Well, you gotta catch up, so
yeah, you have to catch
up.
Oh gosh. It's really funny because like we never are, I mean, we were always watching it with Vala, and so we could never ever be as quick because we always had to wait for her. And then usually, like, I've never ever had a day where I'm not doing something, so it just kind of like coincided with the day where like I didn't have anything to do, I wasn't feeling well, and Vala didn't want to watch it, and so it's like, okay.
And how old is Vala? She's
11.
Yeah.
She hates it.
Yeah, she says it's boring, which I mean, I think overall it's a little like slow pace. So I could see where if you're like 11, maybe it's, you know, it's a lot of, I think like grown-up character intrigue that probably is lost on her.
I mean, Freya loves it, right? So
Freya
she's
loves
really
it?
into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Freya's how old?
15.
15. Okay. Yeah, it would be interesting. Like, you know, because Alyssa, a while back, we had talked to Vala and Freya about Stargate.
Yeah, totally.
It would be interesting if they wanted to come back on and they can talk about it again, where, you know, maybe we could talk about what they loved about overall, like SG1 and Atlantis, and then
True.
maybe Vala can mention why she doesn't like SGU and chose not to watch it, and then Freya can maybe mention what she likes about SGU and stuff, or doesn't, or whatever. Like that could be really interesting, because I think it's interesting to hear what different age groups of people, especially when it's like teens or preteens or whatever. I think it's kind of always fascinating to hear, because it's like, this is a show that, you know, is such a strong following of people that really, you know, have loyalty to the show and love to go to conventions and love all these things about it and are into all the merchandise and all of that, you know. So it's always interesting, I think, when people introduce their kids to it, because I know like on Facebook, on the Stargate Fans United page, there's been multiple times where people have mentioned, oh, I'm introducing my daughter to the show now and she's watching it with me or whatever. And so and usually they like it. So I'm curious, you know, anyone else out there too that has kids that watch it, once you get to Universe, do they like it, you know? Because it is a little bit more adult themed, and it's a little bit different. I'm trying to get my daughter Taylor to watch Stargate with me. She's starting to have more of an interest that I think she's curious about it, but I don't know when I will ever get her to actually watch it with me, because she has her things that she watches, like so we'll see if I ever get her to watch it. But
has she ever been curious though to watch it because of Taylor?
I think like not really. Like I think like she thought it was cool. I like showed her the character. She thought the character seemed really cool. And then like I think like she had like a slight, I think part of it is she's she's stubborn. And if I tell her like, oh my gosh, you gotta watch this, she immediately doesn't want to. There has been shows that she has loved and we have eventually watched together that I say, I think Taylor, you would love this show, and she'll immediately say she doesn't want to watch it because I said that. But then eventually she moves around to it, she watches it, and oh my gosh, she loves the show. Who told her that? Me.
Okay, I get it. But it's funny because like I would expect like she would want to see like, who is Taylor, because I think Vala was pretty like, oh look, it's me.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, once it gets like, if I get her to actually watch it, I think then she would be like, oh my gosh, that's weird, that's cool, that like it's the same name as me kind of thing. Like I think she would be into being curious about that. But I just think because she knows how crazy excited I get about Stargate, like she gets the massive cringe from me, and like I get so excited. And then like, but she has slowly turned around where now she's like open, I think a little bit more open to watching it, where before she wasn't. So but yeah, I mean it is what it is. But yeah, so we've started Universe. It would be awesome to hear like what people have to say about their opinions on Universe without giving spoilers, please. I'm only up to episode 4. Like what were your initial thoughts maybe about Universe when you first started watching it, or if you've rewatched it, has that changed, that kind of thing? So.
Exactly. No, we'd love to hear from you, because I actually love Universe. I wasn't expecting to, but I really like it. So
yeah.
So tell us your thoughts, and let us also know if like you delayed watching it or didn't watch it, what made you influenced to do that, because I think a lot of people were maybe also influenced not to watch it by, you know, other people saying it wasn't good, and then I've heard this a lot, that people then later watched it and went, actually it's really good.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say, if they haven't watched it, they're probably not gonna watch this episode.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, like, if you know, some people waited to watch it and then watched it like later, you know, like they watched it a lot of times. People didn't watch it when they started when it came out, but I think sometimes maybe this also changes,
kind of like what Martin did.
Your initial feeling of it when it first came out, and you had this different expectations, and then suddenly with some time removed, it's probably very different, I would imagine.